Let's bring in Rami Khouri, who's the Director of Global Engagement at the American University in Beirut. He joins me live now from Doha in Qatar. Welcome to the News Hour. What do you understand to be the reasoning underpinning this decision by the Arab League to welcome Bashar al-Assad back? Is this purely pragmatism?
It's pragmatism and self-interest. Also, I think people realise that the boycott of Syria really hasn't changed the policy of the Syrian government at all and isn't likely to do so. It only isolates it. It drives it closer to Iran and Hezbollah and Russia. These are groups that not everybody in the Middle East likes. So I think and people learned from the boycott of Egypt many years ago after Camp David. You don't change a policy of a government by excluding it from its natural environment. And I think that's what their belief is. There's no proof that things will change, but there's more chance of a change for the better for everybody, for Syria and for the Arabs, the rest of the Arabs. There's more chance of something good happening if they do allow it back into the Arab League. But this depends on the cleverness of their diplomacy and their political activism.
Nevertheless, there is a huge section of Syrian society who do feel excluded as a result of this decision. The Syrian opposition have called it the rehabilitation of a brutal regime. What does this mean for those who supported the Arab Spring there?
Well, the Arab uprisings were the most dramatic regional collective multi-year popular rebellion, I think, in the modern history of the world, and almost. Maybe the East Europe uprising against the Soviets, but that took longer. The Arabs did this all together, and they kept it going for 10 years, some of them, like in Lebanon and Sudan and Algeria and places, Iraq. And so the uprising achieved only the expression of the popular will of a vast majority of Arab men and women that they want to live as decent citizens, not as subjects of autocratic, brutal states. That is still there, and it might be activated one day in other circumstances. The regimes were not changed very significantly. Some faces were changed, but the actual rule hasn't. And in fact, some countries that were mildly autocratic became more autocratic in the last few years, like Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon, and others that were, Tunisia reverted back to autocracy. So it's a really dark moment in the Arab world, and there's very little difference there's a little difference between the Assad regime and some of the other Arab regimes in the way they treat their people and putting them in jail, torturing them. The Syrian regime has done terrible things and should be held accountable, but so should most of the other Arab countries. The Syrians probably went just a little further with the brutality of killings, and the Russians helping them with it too.
I mean, this surely puts the United States in an extremely awkward position, given that it supported the Syrian opposition. We had a statement from the US State Department a couple of hours ago saying the US is sceptical of Assad's willingness to solve the Syrian crisis, but is aligned with Arab partners on ultimate goals. What do they mean by being aligned with Arab partners, do you think?
It's just a nice phrase that means we all want democracy, human rights, treating people decently, stability and development. That's what it means. And in fact, it means nothing because all the Arab countries, and most of which are autocratic states, despots almost, some of them despots, some of them just autocrats, they all say the same thing. Their constitutions say the same thing, but they're not serious. They don't really do it. The trajectory of Arab de-development and de-sovereignization over the last 15, 20 years has been stunning in terms of the growth of poverty, unemployment, alienation, vulnerability, marginalization of masses of citizens. That's why you get this mass rebellion that happened in over 10, 12 years. That's why people swim in the Mediterranean and risk dying rather than staying in their own country, or the ISIS is created, or all these terrible things happen. Because there's mass suffering of ordinary citizens who don't have citizen rights.
Right, but before we go, I want to ask you about how the readmission of Syria might impact the dynamic, the sense of unity within the Arab League itself, given that the likes of Kuwait and Qatar, Morocco have reservations about Syria being allowed back in. Yes,
most people have reservations about it. And the Arab League is not a significant institution. It's a symbolic institution. And what the Arab League has done is send a message that it's better to try to solve some of the problems within Syria and around Syria, things like narcotics, things like refugees, things like cross-border criminal activity. It's better to try to solve those things by talking to Syria. And I think that makes sense in any situation. The Iranians and the Saudis just did that. Many people are resolving their conflicts by talking to each other all around the Middle East, which is good, and we want to encourage that. So I think as a first step, letting Syria back into the Arab League is a positive symbolic move, but it's only symbolic. The suffering of the Syrian people continues, the refugees, people in prison, these all continue. So there's no sign that the Arab League or the Arab countries have the capacity or the mechanism to change Syria's policies. That'll only change over time if there is genuine regional integration, development, cooperation, trade expands, aid, development, reconstruction aid. Many things have to happen for the Syrian government to calm down and stop being so autocratic. But this applies to many other governments in the region too.
Right, let's see what doors are opened by talking. Rami Khouri from the American University of Beirut, speaking to us from Doha. Many thanks.